Dr. Jake Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished cleaning the last kennel in his small animal clinic. The morning sun was just starting to rise over the hills of New Eden, casting long shadows across the dusty parking lot outside. His clinic sat on the edge of Port Harrison, far from the busy city center where the fancy doctors worked in their shiny buildings. Jake had been a veterinarian for 15 years on this colony world. He treated farm animals, pets, and sometimes the strange creatures that miners found in the deep caves. His clinic was nothing special, just 4 rooms, basic equipment, and a surgery table that had seen better days. But Jake never turned away. An animal in need, no matter how strange or difficult the case might be, he was pouring his first cup of coffee when he heard the rumbling sound above. Jake looked up through the window and saw something that made him drop his mug. 3 sleek fighter ships from the Terran Defense Force were flying in formation, escorting something much larger. The ships were heading straight for his clinic. Jake stepped outside and watched as the massive alien transport touched down in his parking lot. The ground shook under its weight, and dust flew everywhere. He had never seen a ship like this one before. It was made of some kind of crystal that seemed to shift colors in the morning light. Beautiful patterns moved across its surface like living art. The fighter ships landed nearby, and soldiers in battle armor jumped out. They formed a protective circle around the alien ship, their weapons ready. Jake's heart was beating fast. Whatever was happening, it was serious. A section of the crystal ship opened without making any sound. Figures began to emerge, and Jake realized he was looking at his first real aliens. They were tall and thin, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their skin sparkled in the sunlight, and they moved with a grace that was almost like dancing. The largest of the aliens stepped forward. Jake could tell this was someone important by the way the others stayed behind her. She wore a crown of twisted metal that seemed to float just above her head. Her eyes were like compound gems, reflecting the light in dozens of tiny rainbows. A small device around her neck crackled to life, and she spoke in perfect English. "I am Queen Velara of the Zephyrian Empire. I seek the human doctor called Jake Miller." Jake's throat felt dry. He had heard of the Zephyrians, but had never expected to meet one, especially not their queen. "That's me," he managed to say. Jake Miller, the queen's crystalline face showed relief. "Dr. Miller, I come to you in desperation. My sacred companion is dying, and all of our healers have failed. You are my last hope." Jake looked past the queen and saw more aliens carrying something large from the ship. They moved it carefully onto a floating stretcher that hovered just above the ground. Even from a distance, Jake could see it was some kind of animal, but unlike anything he had ever seen before, the creature was huge, about the size of a small horse, but it looked like a cross between a wolf and something made of starlight. Its fur seemed to glow with its own inner light, but the glow was weak and flickering like a candle about to go out. Beautiful patterns of light moved slowly across its body, but they were fading even as Jake watched. "What is it?" Jake asked, stepping closer to get a better look. "Illuminous," Queen Velara replied. "On my world, they are sacred creatures that bond with our rulers. This one has been my companion for 30 years. We share a connection of mind and spirit. Without her, I cannot lead my people." Jake could see the pain in the queen's strange eyes. Whatever this creature meant to her, it was more than just a pet. It was part of her life, part of her very being. "What's wrong with her?" Jake asked, though he already knew he was probably out of his depth. "We do not know," the queen said. "She became ill 3 days after we arrived on your world. Our healers say her life force is fading, but they cannot find the cause. She grows weaker with each passing hour." Jake watched as they carried the creature toward his clinic. The other aliens were clearly worried. They whispered to each other in their own language, and Jake could hear the concern in their voices even though he couldn't understand the words. "Your Majesty," Jake said carefully, "I have to be honest with you. I'm just a small-town vet. I treat farm animals and pets. I've never worked on anything like this before." Queen Velara looked at him with those compound eyes. "Dr. Miller, we have already visited your world's greatest experts, Dr. Lisa. Chang at the university said it was impossible without Years of study. Dr. Pete Rodriguez at the medical center said the legal risks were too great. Dr. Amy Foster, who they said was your best exotic animal specialist, turned us away because she had no data on our species. Jake felt a chill. If the best doctors on New Eden had already refused, what made the Queen think he could help? Yet, the Queen continued, when we asked who might be willing to try the impossible, every person mentioned your name. They said you never give up on a patient, no matter how hopeless the case seems. Jake looked at the dying creature as they brought it closer to his clinic door. Up close, he could see that it was beautiful even in its suffering. Its eyes were like deep pools of starlight, and they seemed to look right into his soul. The creature's breathing was shallow and labored, and Jake could see it was in pain. I don't know if I can help, Jake said honestly. I don't know anything about your species or your medicine, but you will try? The Queen asked, and Jake heard the desperate hope in her voice. Jake looked at his small clinic, then at the alien Queen and her dying companion. Every logical part of his mind said this was crazy. He had no training in alien medicine, no equipment designed for this kind of case, and no idea what he was dealing with. If he failed, it might cause serious problems between humans and the Zephyrian Empire, but then he looked at the creature again. Its eyes met his, and Jake saw the same thing he had seen in every sick animal he had ever treated: the simple desire to live, to be free from pain. It didn't matter that this animal was from another world or that its owner was an alien queen. It was suffering and it needed help. Double quotes. Yes, Jake said finally. I'll try. But I'll need complete access to any medical information you have about your species. Queen Valara's face showed relief and gratitude. Anything you require, Dr. Miller, my people will provide whatever assistance you need. Jake nodded and opened the door to his clinic. Then let's get started. Katie, he called to his assistant, who had been watching everything from inside with wide eyes. Clear the main examination room. We're about to have the strangest patient of our careers. As they carried the Luminous into his simple clinic, Jake couldn't help but think that this was either going to be the greatest success of his life or the most spectacular failure. Either way, he was committed now. The dying creature needed him, and Jake Miller had never walked away from an animal in need. The alien queen and her entourage followed the stretcher inside, filling Jake's small clinic with their crystalline presence. The real work was about to begin, and Jake only hoped that his 15 years of experience treating the impossible would be enough to save a creature from the stars. Jake's small clinic had never been so crowded. The Luminous lay on his examination table, which suddenly seemed far too small for the magnificent creature. Queen Valara stood beside her companion, one crystalline hand resting gently on the animal's glowing fur. The other Zephyrians filled every available space, their worried whispers creating a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Katie Bell, Jake's assistant, stood frozen in the doorway. She had worked with Jake for 5 years and had seen plenty of strange cases, but nothing like this. The creature on the table seemed to be made of living starlight, its fur shifting between different shades of blue and silver as patterns of light moved slowly across its body. Katie, Jake said softly, I need you to set up the monitoring equipment. Heart rate, breathing, temperature, anything we can measure. Katie nodded and moved quickly to gather the instruments. Her hands shook slightly as she attached the sensors to the creature's body. The Luminous didn't resist, seeming too weak to care about the strange human devices. Jake looked at the readings and frowned. The numbers made no sense. According to his equipment, the creature had 2 heartbeats, both very slow. Its body temperature was much higher than any Earth animal could survive, but the Zephyrians didn't seem concerned about that. Your Majesty, Jake said, I need to understand more about your species. Can you tell me how your healers normally treat illness? Queen Valara's translator device crackled as she spoke. Our healing is based on harmony, Dr. Miller. We sing to the sick to restore balance to their life energy. Each song is tuned to specific frequencies that promote healing. Jake blinked. You sing to them? Yes, said another Zephyrian, stepping forward. He was smaller than the queen, but wore robes that marked him as someone important. I am Healer Zenth, Chief Medical Advisor to Her Majesty. Our healing songs have been passed down for thousands of years. They work by aligning the patient's energy patterns with the natural frequencies of life itself. Jake tried to process this information. On Earth, medicine was about drugs, surgery, and technology. The idea of healing through music seemed impossible. But then again, he was treating an alien creature made of living light. "What songs have you tried?" Jake asked. Healer Zenth's crystalline features showed sadness. "All of them, Dr. Miller. The song of renewal, the harmony of health, even the ancient melody of life itself. Nothing has worked. The luminous grows weaker. Despite our efforts." Jake watched the creature's labored breathing. The patterns of light across its fur were definitely fading. Whatever was wrong, it was getting worse fast. "I need to understand more about the luminous itself," Jake said. "What does it eat? How does it live on your world?" Queen Valara looked at her companion with deep affection. "The luminous do not eat as your animals do, Dr. Miller. They feed on the light stream that flows through our homeworld. It is a form of energy that exists in the space between dimensions. On Zephyria, the light stream is everywhere, as common as the air you breathe." Jake felt a chill of understanding. "And here on New Eden?" "There is no light stream," Healer Zenth said quietly. "We brought energy cells to sustain her during our visit, but they are not the same. It is like trying to feed a fish with dry bread." Katie looked up from where she was monitoring the creature's vital signs. "Jake, the heart rates are dropping, both of them." Jake moved closer to the luminous and looked into its eyes. They were like looking into deep space, filled with swirling galaxies of light. But the light was dimming, the galaxies fading one by one. "How long can she survive without the light stream?" Jake asked. "We do not know," Queen Valara admitted. "No luminous has ever been taken so far from home before. The energy cells were supposed to last for weeks, but they are not enough. She is dying of something your people might call homesickness, but it is deeper than that. She is starving on a level that goes beyond the physical." Jake ran his hands through his hair, thinking hard. This was unlike anything he had ever dealt with. The creature wasn't sick in any way he understood. It was dying because it was cut off from something that didn't exist on New Eden. "Show me these energy cells," Jake said. Healer Zenth led him to a container they had brought from their ship. Inside were dozens of crystal formations that glowed with soft light. "These contain concentrated light stream energy from our homeworld," he explained. "But they are like photographs of food to a starving person. They have the appearance of what she needs, but not the substance." Jake picked up one of the crystals and studied it. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. "What exactly is the light stream? Can you explain it in terms I might understand?" Queen Valara thought for a moment. "Imagine that your sunlight could think and feel. Imagine that it flowed through everything like water, carrying life and consciousness wherever it went. That is something like the light stream. It is not just energy, but living energy that connects all things on our world." Jake nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand the problem, but the solution seemed impossible. How could he recreate something from another world using Earth technology? "Katie," he said, "get me everything we have on energy medicine. Electromagnetic therapy, light therapy, anything that uses energy to promote healing." Katie hurried to the computer and began pulling up files. "Jake, most of that stuff is considered experimental. It's not proven to work." "Neither is alien medicine," Jake replied. "But if they can heal with sound, maybe we can find a way to help with energy." He spent the next hour reading everything he could find about energy-based healing. Most of it seemed like science fiction, but some of the research was intriguing. There were studies showing that certain frequencies of light could promote cell growth, that magnetic fields could reduce pain, and that electrical stimulation could help damaged tissue heal faster. Meanwhile, the luminous continued to weaken. Its breathing became more shallow, and the light patterns on its fur grew dimmer. Queen Valara never left its side, speaking to it in her musical language, trying to comfort her dying companion. "Jake," Katie said quietly, I've been thinking. You know how we use UV lamps for the reptiles? And how the electromagnetic therapy unit helps with muscle pain in the horses. Jake looked up from his reading. What are you getting at? Well, what? If we could combine different types of energy? Light, magnetic fields, maybe even sound frequencies? What if we could create something like their light stream using our technology? Jake stared at her. It was a crazy idea, but it might be the only chance they had. It would be like trying to build a star in my clinic. Maybe, Katie said, but you've done impossible things before. Remember the dolphin with the damaged sonar? You helped it by creating artificial sound patterns. Remember the bird that lost its magnetic navigation? You built a magnetic field generator to retrain its brain. Jake did remember those cases. Everyone had said they were impossible too, but he had found ways to adapt human technology to solve animal problems. This was just a much bigger version of the same challenge. He looked at the dying Luminous, then at Queen Valara's desperate face. Even if we could build something like that, we'd have no idea what frequencies to use, what power levels would be safe, or whether it would work at all. Then we experiment, Katie said simply. We start small and work our way up. It's better than doing nothing. Jake walked over to the Luminous and placed his hand gently on its glowing fur. The creature opened its eyes and looked at him with an intelligence that was clearly more than animal. In that moment, Jake made his decision. Your Majesty, he said to Queen Valara, I'm going to try something that will probably be impossible. I'm going to attempt to recreate the light stream using human technology. The Zephyrians all turned to stare at him. Healer Zent's compound. Eyes widened in shock. Dr. Miller, that is not possible. The light stream is a force of nature that has existed since the beginning of time. Maybe, Jake said, but I've learned that sometimes the impossible just means nobody has tried the right approach yet. Jake paced around his clinic, his mind racing with ideas that seemed crazy even to him. The Luminous was getting weaker by the hour, and every conventional approach had failed. If he was going to save this creature, he needed to think like a human, not like a trained veterinarian following standard procedures. Katie, he said suddenly, get me Danny Walsh on the comm. Tell him it's urgent. Katie looked confused. Danny? The power grid engineer? Jake, what does he have to do with this? Everything, Jake replied, watching the patterns of light slowly fade across the Luminous's fur. If I'm going to build an artificial star, I need someone who understands energy better than anyone else on this planet. While Katie made the call, Jake pulled out every piece of equipment he had ever used for energy therapy. The electromagnetic field generator he used for healing broken bones in horses. The full-spectrum light array he used for treating seasonal depression in the zoo animals. The ultrasonic therapy unit for deep muscle treatment. None of it was designed for what he had in mind, but human ingenuity had always been about making things work together in new ways. Danny Walsh arrived 30 minutes later, still wearing his work clothes and carrying a toolkit that looked like it could repair a spaceship. He was a big man with calloused hands and grease under his fingernails, but Jake knew there wasn't a better engineer on New Eden. Jake, what the hell is going on? Danny asked as he walked into the clinic. Then he stopped dead when he saw the aliens. Oh, that's what's going on. Jake quickly explained the situation while Danny stared at the Luminous with the fascination of an engineer seeing a machine he'd never encountered before. So, you want to build something that recreates interdimensional energy using spare parts? From a veterinary clinic? That's about the size of it, Jake admitted. Danny was quiet for a long moment, studying the readings Katie had collected. You know, this is completely insane, right? Yes, and that it will probably kill us all if we get it wrong? Probably. Danny grinned suddenly. Well, I've always wanted to try something truly impossible. What do you need? Jake felt a surge of relief. If anyone could help him build a miracle, it was Danny. I need a way to generate multiple types of energy simultaneously. Light, electromagnetic fields, maybe even gravitational waves if we can manage it. All synchronized to specific frequencies. And you want to do this without killing the patient or blowing up half the colony? That would be preferred, yes. Danny rubbed his chin, leaving a streak of grease. I've got some equipment in my workshop that wasn't exactly approved by the Colonial Safety Board. Quantum field generators, exotic matter containment units, that sort of thing. Officially, they don't exist. Queen Valara had been listening to their conversation with growing amazement. Dr. Miller, are you saying that? Your people regularly build devices that your government considers too dangerous to exist? Jake and Danny looked at each other and shrugged. Pretty much, Danny said. How do you think we figured out faster-than-light travel? By following safety regulations. Healer Zenth stepped forward, his crystalline features showing confusion. But this approach is so chaotic, so uncontrolled. Our healing methods have been refined over millennia to achieve perfect harmony. And they're not working, Jake pointed out gently. Sometimes you need a little chaos to shake things up. Danny was already sketching designs on Katie's tablet. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. We set up a quantum field generator as the base unit. That gives us access to multiple dimensional frequencies. Then we modulate it with your light array for the visual spectrum, add electromagnetic coils for field generation, and maybe throw in some sonic resonators for good measure. Katie looked at the sketch with wide eyes. Will that actually work? I have absolutely no idea, Danny said cheerfully. But it should be spectacular either way. Jake studied the design. It looked like something from a science fiction movie, old cables and glowing components arranged around a central field projector. How long will it take to build? If we work through the night and don't sleep, maybe 12 hours, Danny replied. But Jake, I have to warn you, this thing is going to draw massive amounts of power. We're talking about enough energy to run half the colony. Can the grid handle it? Danny's grin widened. Not legally, but I know a few tricks. Over the next few hours, Jake's clinic transformed into something between a high-tech laboratory and a mad scientist's workshop. Danny brought equipment from his secret stash, much of it looking like it had been built from salvaged spaceship parts and pure imagination. Katie helped coordinate the installation while monitoring the Luminous, whose condition continued to deteriorate. The Zephyrians watched in fascination as the humans worked. They had never seen anything like the human approach to problem-solving. Where Zephyrian technology was elegant and harmonious, human technology was rough and practical. Where Zephyrian medicine sought perfect balance, human medicine embraced trial and error. Your species is quite remarkable, Queen Valara told Jake as he helped Danny install a quantum resonance chamber. You attempt the impossible not because you are certain of success, but because you refuse to accept failure. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. We're too stubborn to quit, Your Majesty. It's probably our greatest strength and our biggest weakness. As they worked, Jake found himself drawing on every unconventional case he had ever handled. He remembered the time he had helped a deaf cat by creating vibrations it could feel instead of sounds it could hear. He thought about the bird with the damaged magnetic sensors that he had retrained using artificial magnetic fields. Each case had taught him that nature was adaptable, that life found ways to survive even when the normal systems failed. Danny, he said suddenly, what if we're thinking about this wrong? What if the light stream isn't just energy, but information, like a signal that tells the creature's cells how to function? Danny paused in his work. You mean like a biological programming language? Exactly. And if that's true, then we don't need to recreate the light stream perfectly. We just need to create something that speaks the same language. Katie looked up from her monitoring station. The creature's biorhythms have been fluctuating in patterns. I've been recording them. What if those patterns are like words in the light stream language? Jake felt excitement building. They were onto something. Show me those patterns. Katie pulled up the data on her screen. The Luminous's vital signs created wave patterns that were surprisingly complex, almost like music translated into biological functions. That's it, Jake said. We use the creature's own biorhythms as the template for our artificial light stream. We let it teach us the language it needs to hear. Danny was already modifying his design. I can program the quantum field generator to match any pattern you give me. If the creature's body is trying to communicate with the light stream, we can listen to what it's saying and respond. The work continued through the night. Jake's small clinic was soon filled with cables, glowing displays, and humming machinery that looked like it belonged on a starship rather than in a veterinary office. The quantum field generator sat in the center of it all, a complex device that seemed to bend light around itself. As dawn approached, they were ready for the first test. The luminous lay in the center of the field projectors, barely breathing. Its light had faded to almost nothing, and Jake knew they were running out of time. "Everyone ready?" Danny asked, his hand on the main power switch. Jake looked around the room. Katie stood at her monitoring station, ready to track every change in the creature's condition. The Zephyrians watched with a mixture of hope and terror. Queen Valara held her companion's paw, whispering words of comfort in her musical language. "Let's try to save a life," Jake said. Danny flipped the switch, and every light in the clinic went out as the field generator drew massive amounts of power from the grid. For a moment, everything was dark and silent. Then the quantum field came online, and the room filled with impossible light. The room filled with a strange, shimmering light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The quantum field generator hummed with power, creating patterns of energy that twisted and danced through the air like living rainbows. Jake had never seen anything like it, and from the gasps of the Zephyrians, neither had they. The luminous lay motionless in the center of the field, its body barely glowing with the faintest trace of life. Queen Valara knelt beside her companion, her crystalline hand touching the creature's fur. Jake could see tears flowing down her face, catching the strange light and creating tiny prisms of color. "Field is stable," Danny reported from his control station. "Quantum resonance is holding at safe levels. So far, so good." Katie watched her monitors intently. "I'm seeing some response. Heart rate is up slightly, and there's increased electrical activity in the brain." Jake felt his own heart beating faster. The creature was responding, but was it enough? The artificial light stream filled the room with energy, but Jake had no way of knowing if it was the right kind of energy. They were working blind, hoping that human technology could somehow speak the same language as an alien force of nature. "Increase power to 20%, Jake said. Danny's hands moved over his controls. The humming grew louder, and the light became brighter. The patterns of energy swirled faster around the luminous, and suddenly its eyes opened. For the first time in days, the creature lifted its head and looked around. Queen Valara gasped. "She's responding. I can feel her consciousness returning." The luminous tried to stand but was still too weak. However, the light patterns on its fur began to glow more brightly. Waves of blue and silver light raced across its body, and Jake could see that the creature's breathing was becoming stronger. "It's working," Katie said with excitement in her voice. "All vital signs are improving." But Healer Zenth looked worried. "Dr. Miller, be careful. The energy levels you are using are very high. Too much could be dangerous." Jake nodded but kept his attention focused on the creature. They were walking a tightrope between giving the luminous the energy it needed and overwhelming its weakened system. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. 30% power, Jake ordered. The field generator's hum became a roar. The light in the room was now so bright that everyone had to squint. The luminous responded immediately, its whole body beginning to glow with returning health. The creature struggled to its feet, standing shakily but with obvious determination. Queen Valara stood as well, her face shining with joy. "The connection is returning." I can feel her thoughts. Again, her spirit touching mine. But then something went wrong. The readings on Katie's monitors began jumping wildly. The luminous started to shake, and its light flared so brightly that it hurt to look at. "Jake," Katie shouted over the noise of the machinery. "Something's happening. All the readings are going crazy." Healer Zenth stepped forward, his face full of alarm. "It's energy cascade. The creature is absorbing too much power too quickly. Her system can't handle it after being weakened for so long." Jake watched in horror as the luminous began to convulse. The beautiful patterns of light on its fur became chaotic, flashing in random bursts that made no sense. The creature's eyes rolled back, and it collapsed onto the examination table. "Shut it down," Healer Zenth yelled. "You must shut down the field immediately." Danny's hand moved toward the emergency stop button, but Jake grabbed his wrist. "Wait, Jake, what are you doing?" Katie demanded. "The creature is dying." Jake stared at the convulsing luminous, his mind racing. Shutting down the field now would save the creature from immediate harm, but it would also mean losing their only chance to cure it. The artificial light stream was working, but the creature's weakened body couldn't handle the sudden flood of energy after days of starvation. It was like giving water to someone dying of thirst. Too little wouldn't help, but too much could kill them. Jake needed to find the right balance, and he needed to find it fast. "Denny, can you pulse the field instead of keeping it constant?" Jake asked urgently. "What do you mean?" "Like a heartbeat. Give the creature energy in bursts, let it rest between each one. Let its body learn to handle the power gradually." Danny's fingers flew over his controls. "I can try, but I'll need to match the timing to something. What rhythm should I use?" Jake looked at Katie's monitors, where the Luminous's vital signs were still showing chaos. Then he had an idea. Use the creature's own heartbeat, both of them. Create a pattern that matches its natural rhythms. "That's insane enough that it might work," Danny muttered. Making rapid adjustments to his equipment, the constant roar of the field generator changed to a pulsing rhythm. Instead of pouring energy into the creature continuously, the artificial light stream now came in waves, each one timed to match the Luminous's twin heartbeats. The effect was immediate. The creature's convulsions began to slow, and the chaotic light patterns on its fur started to organize themselves. Instead of being overwhelmed by the energy, the Luminous's body began to synchronize with the pulsed field. "It's working!" "Queen!" Villara cried. "Her life force is stabilizing!" Jake watched the monitors as the creature's vital signs slowly returned to normal ranges. The pulsed energy was like teaching the Lumines to eat again, giving it small amounts of the light stream, equivalent and allowing its weakened system to gradually adapt. "Increase the pulse intensity slowly," Jake instructed. "Let the creature set the pace." Over the next hour, they carefully increased the power of each pulse while maintaining the rhythm. The Lumines grew stronger with each wave of energy. Its breathing became deep and regular, and the light patterns on its fur grew brighter and more complex. The creature finally opened its eyes and looked directly at Jake. The intelligence in those cosmic eyes was clear and sharp, no longer clouded by pain and weakness. The Lumines struggled to its feet again, but this time it stood steady and strong. Queen Villara placed both hands on her companion's head, and Jake could see that some kind of mental connection had been re-established. The Queen's compound eyes were bright with tears of joy. "Dr. Miller," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "you have given me back my life. The bond between my companion and myself is stronger than it has been in days." The Luminous turned its great head toward Jake and made a sound that was somewhere between a purr and a musical note. The creature's fur glowed with warm, steady light, and the patterns moving across its body were beautiful and complex. "Jake," Katie said quietly, "look at the readings. Everything is not just normal, it's better than normal. The creature is healthier now than when it first arrived." Jake smiled, feeling exhaustion starting to catch up with him. They had actually done the impossible. A small-town veterinarian, his assistant, and a power engineer had successfully recreated an alien force of nature, using jury-rigged equipment and human stubbornness. But even as he enjoyed the moment of triumph, Jake knew this was just the beginning. The artificial light stream had saved the Luminous, but what would happen when they turned it off? Could the creature survive on New Eden without constant treatment? "Your Majesty," Jake said, "we need to run more tests. I want to make sure the treatment will last." Queen Villara nodded. "Of course, Dr. Miller, whatever you require. You have already achieved what our greatest healers said was impossible." Healer Zenth approached Jake, his crystalline features showing something that might have been respect. "Dr. Miller, I must admit that I was wrong about human medicine. Your methods are chaotic and unrefined, but they are also remarkably effective. You have taught us something valuable today. Jake looked around his clinic, now filled with humming machinery and impossible light. What's that? That sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to ignore the fact that it's supposed to be impossible. Over the next 3 days, Jake carefully monitored the luminous as they gradually reduced the power of the artificial light stream. The creature had learned to absorb and store the energy more efficiently, and its body was adapting to life away from its homeworld. What had seemed impossible just a week ago was becoming routine. The luminous now moved around Jake's clinic with grace and strength. Its fur glowed with steady, beautiful light, and the patterns that danced across its body were more complex than ever before. The creature seemed curious about everything in the clinic, sniffing at equipment with obvious intelligence, and watching the humans work with what Jake could only describe as amusement. Queen Valara had not left her companion's side during the recovery. The bond between them was clearly strong, and Jake often saw them communicate in ways that went beyond words or even telepathy. They seemed to share thoughts and emotions directly, two beings connected at a level humans could barely understand. "Dr. Miller," Queen Valara said on the third morning, "I believe it is time to attempt something that has never been done before." Jake looked up from his coffee. He had been getting very little sleep, monitoring the creature around the clock to make sure the treatment was working. "What do you have in mind, Your Majesty?" "I would like to try disconnecting my companion from your artificial light stream completely. If your treatment has truly worked, she should be able to survive on the energy she has stored." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was the real test. The artificial light stream had definitely saved the creature's life, but could the luminous survive without it? If they turned off the machine and the creature began to weaken again, they might not be able to save it a second time. "Are you sure?" Jake asked. "We could keep the treatment going for a few more days, just to be safe." Queen Valara's compound eyes showed determination. "Dr. Miller, you have already given us more than we dared hope for. But my companion and I cannot remain in your clinic forever. We must know if she can survive in your world without constant assistance." Jake nodded, understanding her reasoning. Katie and Danny gathered around the control station, ready to monitor every aspect of the shutdown process. Healer Zenth stood nearby, his crystalline features showing worry despite his attempts to appear calm. "Okay," Jake said. "We'll reduce the power gradually over the next hour. If there are any problems, we can bring it back online immediately." The shutdown process was tense. Every few minutes, Danny reduced the power of the field generator while Katie watched the Luminous's vital signs like a hawk. Jake stayed close to the creature, ready to restart the treatment at the first sign of trouble, but the Luminous remained strong and healthy. As the artificial light stream faded, the creature's own internal light grew brighter, as if it was compensating for the loss of external energy. The patterns on its fur continued to move in complex, beautiful designs. Finally, Danny shut down the field generator completely. The strange, shimmering light that had filled the clinic for 3 days disappeared, leaving only normal lighting. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. The Luminous stood calmly in the center of the room, its fur glowing with steady, internal light. It looked around at the assembled humans and aliens, then made that musical purring sound that seemed to indicate contentment. "She's stable," Katie announced, relief clear in her voice. "All readings are normal." Queen Valara placed her hands on her companion's head and closed her eyes. After a moment, she smiled with pure joy. "The bond is strong. She is healthy and happy. Dr. Miller, you have accomplished something that will be remembered for generations." Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. They had actually cured an alien creature using nothing but human ingenuity and stubborn determination. It was the kind of success that most veterinarians could only dream of, but even as he celebrated, Jake realized that the implications of what they had achieved went far beyond saving one creature. Word of the impossible cure was already spreading throughout the colony and beyond. His small clinic had been receiving messages from research centers, universities, and even other alien species asking for help with medical problems their own. Doctors couldn't solve. "Your Majesty," Jake said, "what happens now? Will you be returning to your homeworld?" Queen Valara exchanged a long look with her companion before answering. "That is something we have been discussing, Dr. Miller. My companion tells me that she no longer feels the need to return to Zephyria immediately. The treatment you provided has changed her in ways we are only beginning to understand." Healer Zenth stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "The Luminis has learned to process energy in new ways. She has adapted to survive in conditions that should have killed her. This knowledge could be valuable to our entire species." Jake was beginning to understand what they were suggesting. "You want to stay on New Eden?" "For a time, yes," Queen Valara confirmed. "With your permission, I would like to establish a medical exchange program between our species. Your methods are unconventional, but they achieve results that are traditional. Healing cannot match." The idea was exciting, but also overwhelming. Jake looked around his small clinic, trying to imagine it as the center of interspecies medical cooperation. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a small-town vet. I don't know if I'm qualified to represent human medicine to your entire empire." "Queen." Valara's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Dr. Miller, you have just saved the life of a creature that our greatest healers declared beyond help. You used devices built from spare parts to recreate a force of nature that has existed since the beginning of time. If that does not qualify you to represent human medicine, I do not know what would." Over the following weeks, Jake's life changed in ways he never could have imagined. His small clinic expanded into a proper medical center with funding from both human and Zephyrian sources. Katie became the head administrator, coordinating between human and alien medical teams. Danny was put in charge of developing new medical technologies that combined human engineering with alien knowledge. The Luminous became something of a celebrity, the first of its species to live permanently outside the Zephyrian Empire. It seemed to enjoy its role as an ambassador, often visiting other parts of the colony and allowing humans to study its unique biology. Children especially loved the creature, fascinated by its glowing fur and gentle nature. Jake found himself treating patients he never could have imagined. A crystalline being from the Silicate Confederation came to him with a rare mineral disease. A gas-based life form from the Nebula Collective needed help with atmospheric poisoning. Each case taught him something new about life in the galaxy, and about the creative ways that medicine could adapt to serve different forms of life. But the most important change was in how humans were viewed by other species. The story of the small-town veterinarian who saved the alien queen's creature spread throughout the galaxy, becoming a symbol of human determination and compassion. Other species began to seek out human doctors, not because human technology was the most advanced, but because humans never gave up on a patient. "You know," Katie said one evening as they finished treating a patient with 3 hearts and scales that changed color with emotion, "when I took this job, I thought the strangest thing I'd ever see would be a 2-headed cow." Jake laughed, watching through the window as the Luminous played with a group of human children in the clinic's garden. The creature's fur sparkled in the sunset, creating patterns of light that made the children gasp with wonder. "Katie," he said, "I think we're just getting started." The bond between Dr. Jake Miller and the creature he had saved had grown into something larger. A bridge between species that proved compassion and determination could overcome any barrier. In his small clinic on New Eden, that bridge continued to grow stronger with each impossible case that walked through his door. And Jake Miller, the foolish human vet who had dared to treat the alien queen's creature, discovered that sometimes being foolish enough to try was the wisest thing of all.